He thought she was just another spoiled celebrity hiding from her problems. But when a single father helps a mysterious woman escape a swarm of paparazzi, he has no idea she's one of the most famous actresses in the world. What starts as a moment of kindness turns into the headline of the century, because on live television, in front of millions, she calls him her future husband. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The rain came down in hard, cold sheets that slapped against the cracked windshield of Marcus's pickup truck. The wipers squeaked in a frantic rhythm, barely keeping up. His hands were tight on the steering wheel, knuckles pale, jaw clenched with the weight of too many bills and too little time. In the passenger seat, 7-year-old Lily clutched a paper bag to her chest. Inside it, half a loaf of bread, a can of soup, and the last few cents they had stretched into dinner. Marcus didn't speak. He was too focused on the road and too ashamed to say that he wasn't sure how he'd get through next week. The grocery store clerk had looked at him the way people did when they saw a man slipping through the cracks, like they didn't know whether to pity him or walk the other way. "Daddy, can we take the forest road?" Lily asked quietly, peering out the window at the blur of trees. Marcus hesitated. The main highway was jammed with Friday night traffic and flashing cameras. Another celebrity event at the country club had turned the exit into chaos. He didn't want Lily to see it. She always asked why people screamed and chased the limos, why the lights never stopped flashing. He turned the wheel. The forest road was darker, quieter, and soaked in mist. The tires bumped over wet gravel, headlights slicing through the trees like searchlights. Then, something moved. He hit the brakes hard. A woman burst out of the woods, nearly collapsing in front of the truck. Her dress, soaked and torn, clung to her like silk on bone. Her eyes were wild, makeup smeared, hair tangled from running. She didn't look back, just slammed her palms against the hood, breath heaving. Marcus froze. Lily gasped, eyes wide. "Please," the woman begged, voice cracking. "Please don't let them find me." Behind her, in the distance, came the faint roar of engines and the staccato pop of camera shutters cutting through the storm. Marcus looked at the fear in her eyes, then back at Lily. She wasn't just scared, she was hunted. Marcus didn't move at first. His instincts were screaming at him, lock the doors, drive away, keep his daughter safe. But the woman's hands were trembling against the hood, her lips parted in a breathless panic. Behind them, the distant glare of headlights began to flicker between the trees, bouncing like searchlights off the rain-slicked bark. She looked back once, just once, and her whole body flinched at the sight. Her voice broke as she ran to the passenger side. I'll pay you anything. Just please let me hide." Lily was already scooting aside, her small hands tugging at the blanket they kept for emergencies. Marcus's heart pounded as he unlocked the doors. The woman yanked the door open, slipped inside, and threw the blanket over herself just as the first van came tearing around the corner behind them. Marcus didn't wait. He stepped on the gas. The truck lurched forward, tires skidding slightly in the mud before gripping just enough to rocket them down the narrow path. The paparazzi van's lights flashed in the rearview mirror, blinding for a moment before disappearing around a bend. Marcus weaved through the forest road, trying to steady his hands, his breath, the chaos crashing into his otherwise quiet night. Lily peeked at the woman under the blanket, eyes curious and worried. The woman's chest rose and fell rapidly, the outline of her high heels poking awkwardly beneath the fabric. Every few seconds, she whispered something to herself, barely audible, words like "not again" and "just breathe." Marcus didn't ask questions. He drove. A few miles later, the road opened up to the edge of their property, a rundown cabin tucked behind a curtain of pine trees, barely visible unless you knew it was there. He pulled up, killed the engine, and turned slowly to face the woman. "You need to tell me who's after you," he said, voice low, cautious. She pulled the blanket down just enough to meet his eyes. Her makeup was smeared with tears and rain, her lip trembling. "They don't want to hurt me," she whispered. They just want to own me. And in that moment, Marcus realized she wasn't just running from cameras. She was running from a life that was no longer hers. The storm hadn't let up. Rain fell in sheets as Marcus ushered Lily inside first, then turned to the woman who now stood motionless beside his truck, soaked to the bone. Her dress clung to her like a second skin, once elegant, but now shredded along the hem, streaked with mud and pine needles. She looked smaller out here, diminished by the quiet of the woods and the flickering porch light that cast trembling shadows across her face. "You coming in or planning to stand there all night?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice even. She blinked at him like she'd just remembered where she was. Then she nodded, clutching the thin blanket tighter around her shoulders as she stepped toward the cabin. Her heels sank into the soft earth, and for a moment Marcus thought she might fall, but she caught herself. Inside, the cabin was modest. Worn wooden floors, a patchwork couch, a fireplace that hadn't been lit in weeks. Lily had already curled up in the corner, eyes wide, as she clutched her stuffed rabbit, watching their guest with the quiet intensity only children had. The woman hesitated on the threshold, dripping water onto the mat. "You need to get out of those clothes," Marcus said, then caught himself. "I mean, you'll freeze. I have something dry you can wear. It's not glamorous, but it's clean." She gave a faint smile. "Glamour's overrated." He handed her an old flannel shirt and sweatpants from a drawer, then motioned toward the bathroom. She disappeared behind the door, and for a long time there was only the sound of the rain and the low crackle of Marcus trying to get the fire going. When she emerged, her hair was damp and brushed back, her eyes ringed with fatigue. The oversized clothes hung off her, but she looked more human now. Real. "I don't even know your name," he said finally. She paused. "Ava?" Something flickered across his face. Recognition? Maybe, but he didn't say anything. Instead he said, "Well, Ava, whatever mess you're in, it just found its way into my home. And I have a daughter asleep in the next room, so you're going to tell me everything. Starting now." Ava sat down slowly by the fire, her fingers curling around the warm mug he handed her. And for the first time that night, her voice didn't shake. "I didn't mean to drag anyone into this, but I couldn't breathe anymore. I just needed someone, anyone, to help me disappear." The fire crackled softly, throwing flickering shadows across Ava's face as she sat cross-legged on the floor, wrapped in Marcus's flannel in silence. He watched her from the kitchen, leaning against the counter, arms folded, still unsure if this was a dream, a setup, or some twisted version of luck. He'd never seen someone look so completely out of place and yet so utterly defeated. She hadn't said much, just that she needed to disappear, that she couldn't go back, that money wasn't the issue, freedom was. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, her little head resting against the armrest, a blanket tugged up to her chin. Occasionally she stirred and mumbled something under her breath. Ava glanced at her, her eyes softening in a way Marcus hadn't expected. For a moment, she didn't look like a woman used to velvet ropes and red carpets. She looked like someone who'd forgotten what normal felt like. "I didn't mean to scare her," Ava said finally, her voice quiet. Like if she spoke too loud, the moment would break. I ran. I didn't know where else to go." Marcus took a breath, slow and controlled. "Why were they chasing you?" She didn't look at him. "Because I wouldn't do what they told me. They set up a fake engagement, a PR stunt. Make me look good, make him look better. It wasn't real, but they expected me to play along. I couldn't." Marcus frowned. "So you vanished." "They were going to announce it tomorrow. I found out tonight. I left during the gala, jumped a fence in heels, ditched my phone, cut through the woods, and ended up in front of my truck." Ava nodded, a slight shiver running through her. "I thought maybe if I could just find one moment, just one, where I could breathe without someone telling me how to smile, who to love, what to wear, maybe I could remember who I was." Marcus looked down at his hands, calloused and stained from years under car hoods. "And what happens when the world realizes where you are?" She looked up at him, her eyes steady now. Then I guess we find out what kind of man you really are. The fire popped sharply between them, and neither of them looked away. The sun barely touched the horizon when Marcus awoke to the sound of gravel crunching under tires. His heart jumped. For a second, he wasn't sure if it was a dream. Then it came again, slow, rolling, deliberate. He sprang from the couch, careful not to wake Lily, who had climbed into his arms some time in the night. Her small hand was still curled into his shirt. He gently laid her on the cushions and moved to the window. The woods were thick, but not thick enough to hide everything. A sleek black SUV had stopped just beyond the tree line. Its engine idled, lights off, but Marcus knew it was no accident. Out here, nobody showed up by chance. Ava was already up, sitting cross-legged at the dining table, staring at her untouched cup of coffee. She didn't flinch when he entered. Her voice was low. "They found me." Marcus didn't ask how she knew. The calm in her tone said she'd expected this. She stood slowly, pulled the flannel tighter around herself, and walked to the window. One SUV. Blacked-out windows. No plates. Silent. "You need to go," Marcus said. She turned to him. "And go where?" "Anywhere but here." Her eyes flickered toward Lily, still sleeping peacefully on the couch. Ava swallowed hard. "I won't run again," she said. "They don't get to chase me into every corner of my life. Not this time." The doorbell didn't ring. There was no knock, just silence. Then the unmistakable sound of a camera shutter, snapping once, twice from somewhere outside. Ava moved to the front door, but Marcus stepped in front of her. They're waiting for a reaction. That's all they want. A picture, a soundbite, a scandal. "I know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I'm tired of hiding." He stared at her, this woman who showed up soaked and shaking the night before, now standing taller than he'd seen her, not glamorous, not flawless, but brave. And still, he couldn't help but think of Lily, of what this could become. "You walk out that door," he said. "They'll take everything they can. You sure you're ready to let them?" Ava's lips parted, but no words came, because for the first time in a long time, the choice was finally hers. Ava stepped back from the door, not because she was afraid, but because she wasn't sure what crossing that threshold would mean. Marcus could see it in her eyes, that flicker of resolve fighting a lifetime of control. The cameras were waiting like vultures outside. One wrong step, one wrong look, and the whole world would spin a story she couldn't rewrite. Again. Marcus pulled the curtain back just enough to peek outside. The SUV was still there, quiet and patient. No one stepped out. But they didn't need to. They were professionals. They could snap every angle from a mile away and still know how to twist it. "They're not going to stop," he muttered, more to himself than her. Ava sank into the chair at the table, rubbing her hands together for warmth or clarity, maybe both. "They'll follow me until I give them what they want, but I can't go back to pretending. I can't keep putting on a smile and lying through my teeth just so someone else can profit off my face." Marcus turned away from the window, his jaw tight. "Then you're going to need a plan, because hiding in this cabin with a single dad and a 6-year-old isn't going to fix what's out there." She met his eyes, steady now. "I'm not asking you to fix it. I just need somewhere to breathe." From the couch, Lily stirred. Her small voice broke the tension like a whisper through glass. "Daddy, why is there a car outside?" Marcus's expression softened, and he crossed the room to kneel beside her. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just someone looking for directions." Ava watched him lie so easily, so gently. Not for himself, but for Lily. And something in her chest ached. Later, when Lily was back asleep and the SUV had finally pulled away, its mission incomplete for now, Ava stood at the doorway, watching the last trace of black disappear into the trees. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Marcus stood behind her, his voice quiet. If you're staying, you'll need to learn how to live invisible. No names, no news, no slip-ups. Ava looked over her shoulder. Then teach me. And in that fragile space between fear and freedom, something unspoken began to take root. The next morning, the world felt muted. Gray light filtering through the trees, birds quiet as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Marcus stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the road. It was empty now, but his instincts hadn't relaxed. Once the press caught scent, they didn't let go. He'd seen what they did to people who stumbled into their crosshairs. And Ava Langdon wasn't just a stumble. She was a headline waiting to happen. Inside, Ava was at the kitchen sink, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back with one of Lily's old scrunchies. She wore a borrowed hoodie and sweatpants, her Hollywood skin now blotched with real life. No foundation, no filter, no frame. And yet, there was something raw about her that Marcus couldn't look away from. It wasn't beauty, it was truth. She scrubbed a pan with more force than necessary. "How did you end up out here?" she asked over the sound of the running tap. Marcus didn't answer right away. His eyes were still on the woods. Wife passed 3 years ago. Drunk driver. City got too loud after that. Ava paused, hands frozen over the soapy water. "I'm sorry." He shrugged, but his jaw clenched. "Had to find a place where I could raise Lily without the world looking over our shoulder every second. This cabin's not much, but it's honest. People forget how rare that is." She nodded slowly, returning to the dishes, but her mind was somewhere else. "Honesty doesn't exist where I'm from. Everything's curated. Even the pain is staged." Marcus looked back at her, watching how her shoulders tensed with each word. "I wasn't supposed to be famous," she continued, almost to herself. "I was supposed to act. That's all I ever wanted, to lose myself in stories. But somewhere along the way they stopped being stories. I became a product, something they dressed up, sold off, controlled." Her hands trembled now, soap suds dripping from her fingers. Marcus stepped inside, his voice quiet but firm. "You're not a product here." She looked at him then, eyes red-rimmed but clear. "Then I don't know who I am." And that, more than the cameras, more than the lies, was what terrified her most. The next evening, the photo hit the internet. Grainy, zoomed in, but unmistakable. A woman in an oversized flannel shirt stepping out of a beat-up pickup truck. Wet hair, no makeup. And even in low resolution, there was no denying it. Ava Langdon. Marcus saw it on a news alert while waiting in line at the local hardware store. His stomach dropped. He didn't finish the purchase. Just muttered an apology and rushed out the door, the little bell above it jangling violently behind him. When he got back to the cabin, Ava was on the porch, barefoot, phone in hand. She had it turned off, but the panic was already there, etched into the tight set of her jaw, the way her fingers gripped the railing like it might anchor her. "They found the photo," she said before he even reached her. "I don't know who took it, but it's out. Everywhere." Marcus took a breath. "You were careful." "Not careful enough," she snapped, but the anger wasn't aimed at him. It was her own fear, curling in her gut like fire. Inside, Lily was coloring at the table, humming softly to herself, unaware that the woman who read her bedtime story last night was now trending worldwide. Ava stepped inside, pacing. "They're going to swarm this place, Marcus. The press, the suits, the lawyers. They'll say I'm mentally unstable, impulsive, dangerous. They'll dig into your past. They'll find things that aren't there and make them real. That's how this works." Marcus leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching her spin out. "You think I care what they say about me?" he said finally, low and even. "They don't know me. They don't know this place. And they sure as hell don't know you." She stopped mid-step, blinking. "I've seen how you talk to Lily," he said. "How you fold her blankets when she's not looking. How you flinch every time a camera shutter clicks, even in your sleep. You're not what they make you out to be." Ava's eyes welled, her voice cracking as she whispered, "But they'll never let me be anything else." Marcus walked over, closing the space between them. Then maybe it's time we stop letting them decide who you are. Outside, the wind picked up again. And this time, Ava didn't flinch. The knock came just after sunset. 3 short raps. Calm. Too calm. Marcus was at the sink washing Lily's dinner plate when he heard it. He dried his hands on a towel and moved to the door without a word. Ava had already frozen, standing by the fireplace, her breath caught mid-motion. Her eyes tracked him like a hunted animal. She didn't say anything, but he could see the fear swelling just beneath the surface. He opened the door slowly, revealing a man in a suit. Gray, fitted, expensive. No camera in sight, no van waiting in the road, just him and a briefcase. "Mr. Hale," the man said, voice polished and unbothered. "May I come in?" Marcus didn't answer. The name alone was enough. No one around here called him Mr. Hale. "Who are you?" The man smiled. "Let's just say I represent a very concerned team of people who are currently losing a lot of sleep over Ms. Langdon's well-being." Ava appeared behind Marcus, arms crossed, hoodie sleeves pushed to her elbows. Her face was calm, but her voice shook. "Tell them I'm fine." "You've gone off-grid, Ava," the man said smoothly, not even flinching at her sudden presence. "That makes people nervous. The studio's in panic mode. Sponsors are threatening breach of contract. There's a press release waiting with your signature on it. All it says is you took a private wellness break and are returning shortly." "And if I don't sign it?" He smiled again, slower this time. "Then the narrative spins without your consent." Marcus felt the heat rising in his chest, but Ava stepped forward before he could speak. "I'm not going back to pretend I'm okay." The man's expression didn't change. "You don't have to. Just nod at the right time. Smile on cue. That's all anyone ever really expects." Ava stared at him, silent. Then slowly, she shut the door in his face. She didn't say a word as she locked it. Marcus stood behind her, breathing shallow, pulse racing. "You okay?" he asked. She didn't turn around. No. But her voice was steady now, and that, Marcus knew, meant she was finally choosing to fight. It was almost midnight when Marcus found her outside. Ava was sitting on the back steps, knees pulled to her chest, the cold biting at her bare arms. The porch light was off, her face lit only by the faint silver glow of the moon. She didn't hear him approach, or maybe she did and didn't care. Either way, she didn't flinch when he sat beside her, close but not too close. The kind of closeness that asked nothing, but was there if she needed it. She let out a breath, shaky and sharp. "You ever feel like the whole world's watching, just waiting for you to break?" Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Every day since Lily was born." Ava looked at him sideways, something soft breaking through her tension. "But you don't break." He shook his head. "No, I just break quieter." They sat there, the woods humming in the distance, the wind rustling the trees like whispers just out of reach. Ava dug her nails into her palms, trying to ground herself. "They want me to come back," she whispered. "Not because they care, just because it's easier for them if I play along. Smile for the cameras. Fake the relationship. Let them own me." "You think hiding out here is going to change that?" "No," she said, her voice sharper now. "But for the first time in years, I'm not looking at myself through someone else's lens. No stylists, no agents, no choreographed interviews. Just me." She paused, staring into the trees. "And I don't even know who that is." Marcus watched her in the silence that followed. She wasn't performing now. There were no lines to memorize, no angles to hit. Just a woman, unraveling slowly, honestly. And somehow, that made her more real than anything he'd seen on a screen. "You'll figure it out," he said, "but not if you keep waiting for permission." Ava's lip quivered, but she nodded. Then she leaned her head on his shoulder, just for a second. No words, no pretense. And for the first time since she ran, she didn't feel alone. The next morning brought silence, but not the peaceful kind. It was the kind that made Marcus feel like something had shifted beneath his feet, and the ground hadn't quite settled yet. Ava was in the kitchen, stirring oatmeal she wasn't going to eat. Her movements were too careful, too mechanical, like she was trying to pretend everything was normal, like she hadn't shut the door on a life most people would kill to have. Lily sat at the table coloring, her feet swinging under the chair, completely unaware of the war Ava was waging inside her own mind. Every now and then, she'd glance up at Ava, then back down at her crayons, her little brow furrowed in thought. Marcus watched from the hallway, arms crossed, trying to decide if pushing her to talk was the right thing, or if silence was the only kindness he could give her. But then Lily broke it. "Are you going to stay forever?" she asked, not looking up from her page. Ava froze, spoon mid-air. The question landed heavier than Lily knew. She blinked down at the pot, then slowly set the spoon aside. "I don't know, sweet girl," she said softly. Lily looked up then. "Why not?" Ava opened her mouth, closed it, then smiled, but it was the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "Because sometimes grown-ups don't get to choose what forever looks like." Marcus stepped into the room, his voice calm but direct. But sometimes they do, if they stop being afraid of what they lose and start thinking about what they could build. Ava turned to face him. There was something raw in her gaze. Tired, grateful, lost. "They're going to come back," she said. "Not just with suits and contracts. They'll come with stories. Ones they'll twist to hurt you, to hurt Lily. Anyone I care about becomes a target." Marcus didn't look away. "Let them come. You don't understand. They ruin lives." He stepped closer. "So let them try, because this time they're not just coming for you, and I won't let them take what isn't theirs." Ava's breath hitched, and for the first time she believed maybe he meant it. By nightfall, the sky had turned a shade darker than usual, a thick fog creeping in from the tree line like a warning. Marcus stood outside, wrench in hand, trying to fix the generator that powered the backup lights on the porch. It was old, rusted, temperamental, like most things he owned, but it worked, usually. Inside, Ava was pacing. She hadn't touched her food again, hadn't spoken much after their conversation that morning. Marcus could see it all building under her skin, words, fear, guilt. Her shoulders were too tight, her footsteps too fast, and her eyes darted toward the window every few seconds like she was bracing for something to come crashing through the trees. When the generator finally coughed and whirred to life, Marcus set down his tools and wiped his hands. He walked back inside just in time to see Ava standing in the hallway, staring at the coat rack. One of Lily's small drawings was pinned above it, a crayon sketch of 3 stick figures, all holding hands, one labeled me, another Daddy, and the third, in big uneven letters, AVA. She was frozen in front of it. "She drew it yesterday," Marcus said, voice low as he stepped behind her. "Said you're part of the team now." Ava didn't answer. Her fingers reached out, brushing the edge of the paper like it might crumble from the weight of everything she felt. "She shouldn't get attached." "She already is," he said. "So am I." That made her turn. Her eyes flashed with something between panic and longing. "You don't get it. I've spent years being told who to trust, who to love, who to be. And when I finally stopped listening, the whole world turned on me. If I stay here, it's only a matter of time before they twist this too. They'll find a way to make you look like a mistake." Marcus stepped closer, close enough to lower his voice to a whisper. "You think I care what they think? I buried my wife with more debt than memories and built a life from splinters for my daughter. You think I scare easy?" Ava blinked. Her lips parted, but no words came. He looked her straight in the eye. "You're not a mistake. You're the first thing in a long time that feels like a choice." And for the first time, she didn't pull away. The next morning, everything felt heavier. Not because of the weather, the sky was clear for once, but because Ava wasn't in the kitchen, or on the porch, or sitting with Lily by the fireplace like she usually was at this hour. Her borrowed hoodie was still draped over the back of the couch. Her tea mug was untouched. The silence in the cabin wasn't just quiet. It was suspicious. Marcus felt it in his gut. He checked the driveway. Her shoes were gone. So was the blanket she slept with. He didn't panic, not at first. It wasn't until he noticed the slip of paper tucked under the edge of Lily's drawing that something inside him snapped awake. It wasn't much. Just a few lines, scribbled in hurried pen. "Thank you for everything. I can't let you get dragged into my mess. Please tell Lily I love her picture and that I'll always remember her laugh." No signature, no goodbye, just a hole. By the time Lily woke up, Marcus had already checked the nearby roads. Nothing. No tire tracks. No footprints in the gravel. She must have walked, or someone picked her up. He paced the living room while Lily ate breakfast in silence, sensing something was wrong but not knowing what. She stared at Ava's mug like it had been left behind by mistake. "Where's Ava?" she asked finally. Marcus didn't lie. He couldn't. "She had to go for a bit." Lily's eyes narrowed. "Is she coming back?" "I don't know," he said, and that answer felt like a wound he couldn't cover. By late afternoon, Marcus had made a dozen calls he never thought he'd make. He didn't have her real number, just the burner phone she ditched. He didn't know her real address. No one like her ever shared those things, not when their life was a cage lined with gold. But one thing gnawed at him more than the rest. She left without asking for help, because somewhere deep down, she still believed she didn't deserve any. And that broke something in him he didn't know was still capable of breaking. The knock came just after dusk. This time, it wasn't calculated or calm. It was frantic, desperate. 3 hard bangs, followed by silence so sharp it made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. He opened the door and there she was, Ava. Soaked to the skin, no jacket, hair clinging to her face, eyes wide with something that wasn't quite fear, but wasn't far from it. Her chest rose and fell like she'd been running for miles. Marcus didn't ask questions. He stepped aside. She hesitated only a second before slipping inside. Once the door shut, she stood in the center of the living room, dripping rainwater onto the hardwood, shoulders trembling. She wasn't crying, but something in her was splintering all over again. "They found me," she whispered. Marcus's heart sank. "Who?" "Everyone. Paparazzi, studio reps, lawyers, my former fiancé, his team. They know I've been here. There's a story going out tonight. They're spinning it like I had a breakdown, like I ran away from treatment. They're painting you like some small-town savior who preyed on me while I was vulnerable." His fists clenched at his sides, jaw locked. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. I left before they could corner me," her voice cracked. "But it doesn't matter. The damage is done. I tried to stay away to protect you, and all I did was make it worse." Marcus stared at her, the woman who had fought so hard to breathe, now drowning in someone else's version of her life. "I don't care what they say," he said finally. "You should." "Well, I don't." She laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "You don't get it. They will destroy you just to control me. That's how they work." He stepped forward, closing the space between them. "Then let them try." Ava looked up, her eyes wild. "Why? Why would you risk everything for me?" And for the first time since she stepped into his life, he didn't hold back. "Because Lily draws you in her pictures. Because I hear her laugh when you're around. Because for the first time since my wife died, the house doesn't feel empty." Her lips parted, but no words came. "You don't get to disappear again," he said softly. "Not from this. Not from us." And in that moment, soaked and shattered, she didn't want to. They didn't sleep that night. Ava sat curled up on the couch, wrapped in a towel, one of Marcus's old flannel shirts draped over her shoulders. The fireplace crackled, but it couldn't chase away the chill in her bones. Marcus sat across from her, elbows on his knees, eyes never leaving her face. Not to study her, not to judge, just to make sure she didn't vanish again. "They're planning a press conference," she said quietly, voice raw from exhaustion. "They want to control the narrative before I do. They're offering me a deal. Say I had a panic attack, agree to take a break from filming, and they'll make the story go away." And if you don't, they'll release everything they have. Old photos, private emails, audio recordings. They've been collecting dirt on me for years, just in case I stopped being useful. Marcus's stomach turned, not because he didn't believe her, but because he did. Because this wasn't just some industry scare tactic. This was her reality. Her life had become a contract she couldn't escape from without blood. "I don't know what to do," she said. "If I go along with it, I disappear. If I fight, I destroy everyone around me." "You're not responsible for what they do to you," Marcus said. "You've been surviving for so long, you don't even remember what it feels like to stand still." She looked up at him, eyes rimmed with fatigue, but something else too, anger. Not the kind that lashes out, the kind that simmers in the chest until it becomes resolve. "I don't want to run anymore," she whispered. "I want to own my story. I want to say it out loud, every broken part of it. But if I do, I have to go back into that world, even just for a moment." Marcus didn't flinch. "Then go back, but go back on your terms." Ava stared into the fire, her reflection dancing in the glass. "If I do this," she said, "I need someone next to me who doesn't blink when the lights come on." He stood slowly, walked to her side and took her hand. "I don't blink," he said. "I build." And in that quiet room, with a storm waiting beyond the walls, Ava finally let herself believe she didn't have to burn alone. 2 days later, the city swallowed them whole. Ava hadn't been back in over a year, not like this. No assistants, no handlers, no PR machine smoothing her path, just her, walking through the polished glass doors of the studio building with Marcus beside her and a storm behind her eyes. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floors, echoing with purpose. But Marcus could feel the tremor in her hand as she squeezed his fingers once, quickly, before they reached the main lobby. The receptionist didn't recognize her at first. That was the power of plain clothes, no makeup, and unannounced arrivals. But the second Ava said her name, the woman's smile vanished, and the tension cracked open the room like a fault line. They were led down a long corridor, past framed photos of movie premieres and award nights, all pieces of a life Ava had lived in fragments. At the end of the hall, a conference room waited. Glass walls, 12 chairs, and a table too long for honest conversation. Inside sat 3 executives, all with carefully neutral expressions and pens already in hand. Legal pads, contracts, bottled water lined in military precision. Ava didn't sit. "I'm not here to sign anything," she said. Her voice was clear, firm. She didn't tremble. The man in the center, probably mid-50s, leaned back with a slow exhale. "Ava, we're trying to help you. This isn't about punishment. It's about protecting the brand, about protecting you." "No," she replied. "It's about controlling me." Marcus watched quietly from the corner. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence alone shifted the air in the room, uninvited, unimpressed, and unfazed by polished manipulation. "You walk out of here without a resolution," one of the lawyers warned. "They'll bury you in headlines by noon." Ava smiled then, not sweetly, not politely, but the kind of smile someone wears when they've already made peace with fire. "Let them." And with that, she turned on her heel, walked out of the room without looking back, and left a silence so thick it suffocated everyone behind her. Marcus followed, and as the doors shut behind them, he whispered, just loud enough for her to hear, "You just flipped the script." Ava kept walking, and for the first time in her life, the story was hers. The fallout came fast, faster than either of them expected. By the time they got back to the cabin that night, Ava's name was plastered across every tabloid, blog, and entertainment headline in the country. Langdon meltdown behind closed doors was trending. So was secret affair with small-town widower. They twisted everything. Grainy photos of Marcus picking up groceries became proof of a secret double life. A childhood photo of Lily, taken from an old social media account, was cropped into a thumbnail without consent. They dug, scraped, and spit out every piece of truth they could bend. Ava stared at the television in silence. Her hands were clenched into fists in her lap, knuckles white. "They've dragged your daughter into it," she whispered. "This is what I was afraid of." Marcus stood near the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. "We'll deal with it. They won't stop." "I don't care." She turned to him then, eyes bloodshot, voice frayed. "You should. You really should, Marcus. Because they're not just making me the villain now, they're turning you into one too. They're saying you're dangerous, that you manipulated me, that you're exploiting me. They're painting Lily as the child caught in some warped custody fantasy." Marcus didn't blink. "They don't know me. But they're convincing people who don't need the truth. Just a headline." He stepped toward her slowly, knelt in front of the couch so their eyes met. "You think I care what strangers on a screen think? I've lost everything once. I know what silence sounds like when you come home to no one. If the price of keeping what matters now is dealing with noise, I'll pay it every day." Ava tried to hold it in, but the tears came anyway, slow and hot. Not from fear this time, from the weight of someone finally choosing her without a script, without an angle. "They'll ruin you," she whispered. He reached up and tucked her hair behind her ear. "Only if I let them." And in that quiet space between the noise of the world and the firelight dancing across her face, Ava realized something terrifying and beautiful at once. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for them. The call came the next morning. Ava almost didn't answer it. The number was unknown, the kind she'd been taught to ignore. But something about the timing, the way the sun had barely crested the trees and the house was still quiet, made her press accept. The voice on the other end was calm, polished, familiar. "Ava, it's Grace, from the Summit." Ava froze. The Summit was the biggest morning show in the country, the one she used to avoid unless her contract forced her into a promo tour. Grace was the lead anchor, ruthless, but fair, usually. "I wanted to speak to you directly," Grace continued. "No managers, no agents, just us." Ava leaned against the kitchen counter, the cold of the stone seeping into her spine. "I'm listening. You've seen the stories. You know what they're saying. We'd like to give you a chance to respond. Live. On our platform. No editing, no PR spin. Just you." Ava didn't answer. She stared at the streak of sunlight on the hardwood floor and thought about every time she'd been told to sit still, smile, stick to the talking points. Grace's voice softened. "They're going to run this story whether you show up or not. Wouldn't you rather tell it yourself?" After a long silence, Ava said, "I need time." "You've got 24 hours, Grace replied. "After that it becomes someone else's narrative again." When Ava hung up, Marcus was already standing in the doorway, arms folded. "You heard that? Enough." She looked at him, her chest tight. "If I go on that show, it's live. No safety net. If I get emotional, they'll say I'm unstable. If I get angry, they'll say I'm ungrateful. And if I tell the truth, they'll listen," he said, "or they'll destroy me faster." He walked toward her, slow and steady, then gently placed both hands on her shoulders. "Then say it anyway." Ava felt the panic rising, but behind it was something stronger, the need to reclaim the voice she'd given away piece by piece. She looked up at him. "Then I need to decide what I'm going to say." And this time no one was going to write it for her. The studio lights were blinding, not in the way Ava remembered, where they were meant to flatter, to soften imperfections, to sculpt a performance out of a person, but sharp, unforgiving, honest. They lit every corner of the soundstage like a courtroom. She could see the cameras, the teleprompters, the empty chairs lined up behind the glass. But most of all, she could see the reflection of herself in the studio monitors. No makeup artist, no stylist, no armor, just her. She sat in the guest chair as Grace Matthews settled opposite her, dressed in her signature charcoal gray suit, perfectly poised. The cameras hadn't rolled yet, but the tension was already alive between them, thick, heavy, the kind of silence that begged to be broken. "You sure about this?" Grace asked. not as a reporter, but as a woman who knew exactly how brutal the next 10 minutes could be. Ava nodded once. If I back out now, I lose everything that matters. The stage manager gave the countdown. 3, 2, 1. The red light came on, and the broadcast began. Grace's voice was calm, professional. Our next guest needs no introduction, but this morning she's here not as an actress, not as a celebrity, but as someone whose life has been under relentless scrutiny. Ava Langdon, thank you for being here. Ava didn't smile. She didn't nod. She met the camera head on. Thank you for having me. Grace folded her hands. Let's get straight to it. You've been missing from the public eye for weeks. The media has speculated everything, from breakdowns to kidnappings. Where have you been? Ava inhaled deeply, her throat dry. I've been in the only place where I wasn't expected to lie. A hush fell over the set. I left because I couldn't breathe, because I spent 10 years being marketed instead of understood, because people made decisions for me about who I loved, what I wore, what I said, until there wasn't anything left that felt like mine. Grace sat still, her face unreadable. Ava's voice shook, but she didn't stop. But I met someone, not a producer, not an agent, just a man raising his daughter the best way he knows how. And for the first time in a long time, I remembered what it felt like to be seen without being sold. The camera didn't blink, and neither did she. Back at the cabin, Marcus stood frozen in front of the television. He hadn't moved in minutes, not since Ava's face filled the screen, and her voice, so clear, so raw, began pouring out into living rooms across the country. Lily sat on the floor, cross-legged, her stuffed rabbit in her lap, not fully understanding what was happening, but understanding enough to know that Ava was telling the truth, and it mattered. Marcus watched her speak with no cue cards, no pre-approved answers, no practiced deflections. Every word out of her mouth was a thread being pulled from a tightly woven lie, unraveling everything the world had believed about her. I'm not broken, she was saying on screen. I'm not crazy. I'm not some delicate thing that fell apart. I left because I was tired of being a puppet, because for once in my life I wanted something real. Grace leaned in. A lot of people are wondering, who is the man in the photographs? The one they say you've been hiding with? Ava didn't hesitate. His name is Marcus. He's a mechanic, a father. He lost his wife and never stopped fighting for his daughter. He didn't ask for any of this. But when I showed up, scared and broken, he opened his door anyway. Not because I'm Ava Langdon, but because I was a woman standing in the rain. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. He swallowed hard. Grace kept her voice steady, but the question was sharp. Are you in love with him? Ava smiled. Not the rehearsed smile she gave at award shows, but something honest, soft at the edges. I don't know if love is even the right word for it. All I know is, I trust him. He made me feel like I didn't have to perform just to deserve space in the world. Grace sat back, letting the silence linger. Ava looked straight into the camera. And if he's watching this, I hope he knows. I choose him. Marcus didn't speak, didn't move. Lily looked up at him, eyes wide. Daddy, she whispered, does that mean she's coming home? He didn't have to answer, because she already was. The knock this time wasn't frantic. It was soft, measured, like someone afraid to hope. Marcus opened the door slowly, not sure if it would be her, not sure if he could handle it if it wasn't. But there she was, standing on his porch again. No makeup, no cameras trailing behind her, no shadows chasing her name. Just Ava. Her eyes met his, and in that one breathless second, the world seemed to still. She clutched her phone in one hand, a half-empty duffel slung over her shoulder. She looked like someone who had finally laid down the weight she'd carried for years and didn't know what to do with the space it left behind. He didn't speak. Not right away. She stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. I meant every word. I know. I wasn't sure you'd still want me after all this. He held her gaze, steady and unflinching. I was never waiting for the perfect version of you, Ava. Just the real one. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Not this time. Behind him, Lily peeked around the corner of the living room, barefoot, her hair wild from sleep. When she saw Ava, her whole face lit up. She ran to the door, wrapped her arms around Ava's waist, and didn't let go. Ava sank to her knees, holding her tightly. "I missed you," Lily mumbled against her shoulder. "I missed you more," Ava whispered back. Marcus stood there, watching the two of them, something sharp and silent catching in his throat. This was what the world had tried to rip apart, something that had never asked to be perfect, just honest. When Ava stood again, she looked at Marcus, her hands trembling slightly as she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "They offered me my contract back," she said. "More money, a new publicist, control over the scripts I choose, but only if I agreed to play along again." "And?" I tore it in half. She stepped closer, close enough that her breath warmed his chest. "I'm done performing for people who never bothered to know me." Marcus didn't say a word. He just pulled her in and held her like he'd never let go again. The next few days were quiet, but not in the way silence used to feel. This silence wasn't empty. It wasn't filled with tension or things left unsaid. It was the kind that settled into the walls of the cabin like warmth, like breath. Ava moved through the house differently now, slower, grounded, no longer pacing like something might come crashing through the window at any second. Lily followed her everywhere. She would hold Ava's hand while she brushed her teeth, sit next to her during meals, and crawl onto her lap while she read. Ava didn't resist it. She held on just as tight, like she knew how rare it was to be wanted for nothing but her presence. Marcus watched them from the porch that evening, sipping coffee as twilight washed over the trees. He could hear Lily's laughter through the open window, and Ava's voice, soft, amused, unfiltered. It was the sound of two people building something that didn't need to be named to be real. Later, when Lily was asleep, Ava stepped outside, arms wrapped around herself, but not from the cold. "Feels strange," she said. Marcus looked over. "What does?" "This, peace. Like I don't have to keep looking over my shoulder." "You don't." She nodded, staring into the trees for a long moment. "I spent so much of my life trying to be perfect for people who didn't care. I thought if I worked hard enough, looked the right way, stayed quiet, they'd love me back. And did they?" Her silence was answer enough. "But she does," Marcus added gently, nodding toward the window where Lily's drawing still hung. Ava smiled, tears threatening but never falling. "And so do you." He didn't flinch. "Yeah, I do." She turned to him then, stepping closer, her voice lower. "Roar. I want to stay. I don't care what anyone says, what gets written, what I lose. I want to be here, with you, with her." Marcus didn't speak right away. He just reached out, pulled her close, and kissed her with everything he didn't have to say out loud, because she already knew. Marcus stood in the garage with the door wide open, the soft hum of cicadas filling the air around him. His hands were deep in the guts of an old Chevy that hadn't run right in years, the kind of work he could do with his eyes closed. But he wasn't thinking about the engine. His mind kept drifting back to the kitchen that morning, Ava cooking breakfast barefoot, humming a song he didn't recognize while Lily danced in circles around the table. There was something terrifying about how normal it had all begun to feel. Ava appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, hair pulled back, wearing one of his old flannel shirts again like it belonged to her. Maybe it did now. "You've been quiet," she said. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag, leaned against the workbench. "Just thinking." "Dangerous habit." He gave her a half smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I've been waiting for the other shoe to drop." Ava stepped inside, her boots echoing softly against the concrete. "So have I." They stood there in the scent of oil and dust, the silence between them heavier than it had been in weeks, not cold, just full of something unspoken. You ever feel like this? Marcus said finally, motioning around the space. Is too good to last? Ava nodded. Every day. But it keeps lasting anyway. She smiled. That's what scares me most. He set the rag down, turned to face her fully. You don't have to keep waiting for it to fall apart. Not here, not with me. I know that, but knowing it and trusting it, those are different things. Marcus stepped closer until they were almost chest to chest, his voice low. Then trust me. I do. Then let's stop holding our breath. Her eyes flicked up to meet his, and in them he saw every wall she'd ever built, every lie she'd been fed about love being conditional, every time she'd been left behind. And then she nodded. I'm in, she whispered. Whatever this is, I'm not running from it. And Marcus, for the first time in a long time, believed they might actually be building something that could hold. It happened during the grocery run, something so ordinary, so mundane, it should have been forgettable. Ava standing in the cereal aisle, holding Lily's hand while Marcus scanned prices with the quiet precision of a man who knew the weight of every dollar. They hadn't even meant to come to town, but Lily's favorite snack had run out, and Ava insisted on coming along. I need to remember what real life feels like, she'd said. This is real, right? But real didn't always mean safe. The moment they rounded the end cap, Ava spotted them, two men, one with a phone already raised, the other pulling a boom mic from under his coat. They weren't paparazzi in the traditional sense, but Ava recognized the look. They were freelancers, hyenas sniffing blood. She froze. Lily tugged her hand. Marcus noticed her stiffen and turned just as the first flash went off. Miss Langdon, one of them barked, is this your secret family? Are you living here now? Are you pregnant? Marcus stepped in front of them immediately, his body blocking the camera like a wall of calm fury. Back off. She's with her kid. But the camera didn't waver. The mic moved closer. How long have you two been involved? Are you planning a wedding? Should your fans be concerned? Ava felt her chest clamp shut. Her heartbeat exploded in her ears. Lily's hand gripped tighter. Marcus turned, grabbed her gently by the arm. Get her out of here, he said to the nearest store employee who had started to approach. Now! They didn't speak the whole ride home. Ava sat in the passenger seat with her fists clenched in her lap. Lily, quiet in the back, sensed the shift and didn't say a word. Back at the cabin, Marcus killed the engine. Ava didn't move. I tried to keep them away, she said finally. I did everything right, but it's never going to be enough, is it? Marcus looked at her, steady and certain. No, because doing everything right isn't what keeps them out. But knowing who you are, that's what keeps them from winning. She nodded just once, then reached back and took Lily's hand. And this time, she didn't let go. Ava sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad in front of her, blank except for a single line at the top. Tell the truth before someone else tells it for you. The grocery store incident had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. Not because she hadn't seen it coming, but because she had. It was only a matter of time. Every quiet moment she'd found in this cabin had been temporary, fragile. Now the real world had cracked the door again, and it wouldn't be long before it kicked it wide open. Marcus walked in from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. He stopped when he saw her, eyes fixed, hand unmoving, as if she'd been frozen there for hours. You all right? He asked. She didn't look up. They're not going to stop. The stories, the cameras, the threats. No, they won't, he said matter of fact, but neither will you. She finally looked up. And what if I don't know how to fight them anymore? He stepped closer, pulled out the chair beside her. Then don't fight them the way they expect. Tell your story, all of it, on your terms. Ava let out a hollow laugh. You think that'll stop them? No, but it'll stop them from owning you. She stared at the paper again. Slowly, her hand moved, pen dragging across the surface like a blade carving into armor. I was 12 when my mother signed my first contract, she began. I said yes to everything, even when it broke me. I let them turn me into a brand because I thought love was something you earned by staying useful." Her voice shook, but she didn't stop writing. "I want Lily to grow up knowing love doesn't come with a press release. That being visible doesn't mean you owe yourself to the world." Marcus watched her, not touching her, not interrupting. And for the first time, Ava wasn't waiting to be protected. She was protecting herself, one word at a time. It started with a letter, handwritten, unpolished, honest. Ava mailed it to a journalist she trusted, the only one who had ever asked questions that didn't come laced with traps. No legal team reviewed it, no agent approved it, just her words, her story, and the raw truth carved into every line. Within 24 hours, it was published in full. No edits, no filters. The internet caught fire, but it wasn't like before. This time something shifted. People weren't mocking. They weren't dissecting her dress or guessing her net worth. They were listening. Thousands of comments flooded in, young girls, working mothers, people who had been chewed up and spit out by industries that told them how to live and who to be. Ava didn't become a spectacle. She became a mirror, and for the first time, the reflection stared back with understanding instead of judgment. Marcus sat on the porch that night, scrolling through the responses. Lily was asleep inside, curled up with a stuffed rabbit Ava had stitched a patch onto the day before. The house was quiet but not heavy, just full. Ava stepped outside and handed him a glass of iced tea. Her hair was pulled back, face clean, eyes tired but steady. "They're asking me to speak at a women's summit in the city next month," she said. "Panel on public pressure, media ethics, identity." Marcus raised a brow. "You going?" "I don't know. I didn't expect any of this." He looked at her for a long moment. "You wrote the truth. Now people want to hear more of it. You sure that's not exactly what you've been waiting for?" She sat beside him, pulling her knees up under the blanket she brought out with her. "I don't want to become another version of what they expect." "Then don't. Be this." She glanced over, her voice lower now. "You think I can handle it?" "I know you can." The wind moved gently through the trees, and for the first time the quiet wasn't something to fear. It was a pause before the next chapter. One she finally had the pen to write. The day of the summit came faster than Ava expected. The city skyline rose like a wall of glass and steel in front of her as the car pulled up to the venue. She hadn't been back here in months. This part of the world, this version of herself. Her name was everywhere again, but for a different reason now. Banners hung above the entrance. Ava Langdon, redefining voice, not image. She stepped out of the car slowly, the heels unfamiliar but grounding. She didn't wear designer this time, just a navy blouse, slacks, and a silver chain Lily had given her that morning with a tiny lopsided heart charm she said represented strength but the cute kind. Inside, the crowd was already buzzing. Cameras rolled, lights flashed, but no one shoved a microphone in her face. No one asked who she was dating or whether she was still hiding out. They just watched, curious and quiet, waiting to hear from the woman who had finally stopped being silent. Backstage, she stared at her reflection in the dressing room mirror. For a moment she saw the old Ava, the one groomed for fame, eyes hollow behind a perfect smile. Then the door opened. Marcus stepped inside. He wasn't supposed to be there. He hated cities, hated crowds, hated anything that required a tie. But there he was, in a wrinkled jacket and that quiet strength that didn't need to be loud to hold the room. "You didn't think I'd let you face them alone, did you?" he said. She turned to him, something breaking in her chest, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of feeling safe. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered. He stepped closer, touched her cheek gently. "Yes, you do. You're telling the truth. That's all you've ever needed to do." She nodded once, then walked onto the stage. As the applause swelled around her, Ava didn't feel like a survivor. She didn't feel like a celebrity or a runaway or a symbol. She felt like a woman who finally got to speak without being corrected. And somewhere in the wings, Marcus watched with his hands in his pockets, eyes locked on her like she was the only light in the room. The red carpet was rolled out, but Ava didn't walk it like she used to. There were no handlers fixing her dress, no assistants shouting time checks in her ear. The photographers still showed up, flashing their lights, calling her name, but this time she didn't stop and pose. She walked straight past them with Lily's small hand tucked in hers, and Marcus a step behind, calm and grounded in the chaos like he always was. The event wasn't for a movie. It wasn't even about her, really. It was a charity gala for children's mental health, hosted by the foundation Ava had quietly launched just weeks earlier. No press release, no campaign. Just her story turned into something useful, something real. Inside, the ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and too much money, but Ava didn't flinch. She'd worn their shine before, learned how to smile through the burn. Tonight, she was here on her own terms, in a black dress that didn't try too hard, with no makeup team behind it, just her, standing tall and whole. When they reached the main floor, a host approached with a mic, gesturing toward the stage. "You're up after the keynote. Just a few words." She nodded, heart steady. Marcus leaned in close. "You don't have to say anything you don't want to." She looked at him. "I know, but I want to." When her name was called, she walked up slowly. The room fell quiet. She took the mic, scanned the crowd, and then looked down at Lily, who was watching her from the front row, legs dangling off the chair, smiling like the world had already been fixed. Ava cleared her throat. "People used to ask me what I wanted, and for a long time I thought the answer had to be applause, validation, relevance." She paused. "But all I ever really wanted was to stop performing." She looked at Marcus then. His eyes met hers, steady, unwavering. "So if anyone's wondering who I am now, I'm a mother figure to the girl who saved me, a partner to the man who never asked me to be anything but myself, and most of all, I'm finally home." The crowd rose to their feet, but Marcus didn't move. He just smiled, because he knew she meant every word.